The Parable of Barataria, Part 10, page 24. Unexpected changes. Money stored instead of goods. The chronicler gives a wonderful rendition of all the changes that developed in the trade habits of the people. How everything became infected by the spirit of the store of value error and disintegrated. Cash payment was replaced during the first days by the credit and installment system. The wares, which nobody wanted for storage, were sold in smaller and smaller packages. All lived from hand to mouth, and more merchants were needed to accomplish the distribution in small quantities. Store after store lined the streets. Entire streets had to be rebuilt for stores which absorbed as wares what formerly was distributed in the storerooms of the houses of the Baratonians. And with all this came a change in the relationship between buyers and sellers. The buyers had become high-hatted towards the sellers. They bragged of the superior qualities of their store of value. They indicated that if the sellers would not behave politely and subserviently, they would simply go elsewhere or remain at home, and that the sellers would suffer the loss and damage accruing them out of the perishability, cost of maintenance, and the expense of storing the merchandise. Surplus values rooted in private property. One day, there appeared in the Via Ponza Journal the following advertisement: Barabino and Company, Bankers. We beg to call the attention of the public to the fact that we have opened a department store or a department for savings and are prepared to accept them on the following conditions: on call with 1% interest, 3 months with 2% interest, 1 year with 3% interest. This advertisement called forth from Carlos Marquez a triumphant article in the Via Ponza Journal, in which he said, "At last the eminent character of private property as a machine bearing surplus value has made its appearance. True, it has taken considerable time for the germs of capitalism to fully develop, but now there will be no further halt. He who wants private property must also reckon with the consequences. Now capitalism will unfold in all its glory. The people now will have to sweat and bleed in order to feed the Moloch capital. And this will go on until capitalism has developed to its own destruction, just as the germ of fermenting sugar is poisoned by its own toxin. Long live communism! Away with private property." In this manner, Carlos Marquez concluded his article. Immediately, Diego Martinez sent a reply whereby the assertions of Marquez were refuted, and in a simple way, the appearance of interest in Barataria was basically linked with the currency reform. As soon as money is made into a store of value, and money as an exchange ware is made better than all other wares, it is made use of as a medium of saving, and these media of savings can be lured into circulation by means of interest. Interest was a necessity which had to come as soon as they started to figure their money in cubic measures instead of by weight. Refutal hushed up by the press. However, the Villa Ponce Journal returned the article with the remark that it could not ask its enlightened readers to study such gray theories. Nobody would ever believe that such a tremendous fact as capitalism could be traced to the sale of the seeds of the Pinus moneta by cubic measure instead of by weight. Deposit books instead of storerooms. The firm Bottabino and Company were very successful with their new enterprise. The Bottatonians had scarcely had time to look at their value-preserving money, their new static money, when, attracted by the offer of interest, they carried their money to the bank. The result was that throughout Barataria, the provisions rooms, which were formerly full, were now empty. Instead of storing bacon, flour, sugar, oil, cloth, etc., in considerable quantities, they now held a small, thin passbook with the deposit entry. Goods were now produced in diminished quantity, and those actually produced were congested in the storerooms of the merchant princes, held at the disposal of those who had money. And the money of Barataria was held in large measure by the banking firm of Bottabino and Company. Money accumulated in the bank. The chronicler expresses his astonishment at the folly of the Bottatonians, who seem to have learned nothing from the seed speculation of the previous year. True, they had now taken care not to deprive themselves of seed, because they naturally feared a repetition of speculative activity. But no one gave advanced thought to harvesting problems, and to the immense number of sacks and bags necessary to convey the harvest to suitable shelter. Thus the people were now exploited at harvest time instead of at seed time. Bottabino alone had had the forethought to accumulate a sufficiency of sacks and bags. These they now offered to the citizens at fancy prices. An old lesson with a new theme. And because Mr. Bottabino wanted to teach his fellow citizens an important lesson, he gave a new public lecture in which he described his speculation in detail and proved to the perplexed Baratonians that his firm had made $1 million in one transaction. The Baratonians would now have to stand such coups regularly because, with their introduction of the monetary store value, which was nothing but a destroyer of true values, they had everything prepared for the success of such speculations. Now the entire stock of merchandise was always on the market at the disposal of everybody, on chance demand, that is, also at the disposal of speculators, while the former storerooms and the houses now had only provisions for 24 hours. The monetary value preserver with which they now became acquainted was excellent for the speculator only.